Hello, and welcome back to Tech Life Stories. On the podcast today, I have Simon Kent. Simon is an expert in IT service management. Hello, Simon.
Hello,
He's
hello.
an entrepreneur. He runs a business with his wife called Quantum 21, focusing on personal, business, and digital transformation. He does some freelance work for SDI. He has a whole host of certifications, including ITIL, got a degree in mechanical and microprocess engineering. He's also an author of a book called The Gift, which talks through his experience of surviving a stroke back in 2021, which we will touch on further in the podcast. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thanks, Khan.
I
Great
hope
to be
that's a
here.
good intro.
I think it's good enough. Yeah,
Good enough. Good.
it's a pretty varied career. Yeah,
It is varied. I could have taken a lot more from your LinkedIn profile, but I wanted to bring it into a snapshot.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, next time I want a CV writing, I'll ask you.
you can definitely come to me. Don't worry, I'll help you. Um,
Sweet.
I always like to start the show by finding out like why you wanting to get into technology and how you got into technology. Some people fall into it. Some people
Mm.
chose it as their career path. Talk me through that. Re,
And look,
rewind.
yeah, I've got to take you right back to when I was 16. So
Go
I
for
left
it.
school. I left school at 16. My elder brother and sister both went on to A levels, university, sixth form, blah 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 blah. And then, me being me, just didn't want to go down that route. So I um, found myself in an engineering apprenticeship. I didn't even like engineering, right? But I, nevertheless, and the reason was I thought, do you know what? I still want to get education, but I also want some money in my pocket.
Good.
So that was the reason for me going, I know I'll do an engineering apprenticeship. So that's what I did. Anyway, as I was progressing through, I think it was a 4 year apprenticeship, 4 year. Um, I really came apparent that I really didn't like engineering. It wasn't me. The only thing I was any good at in terms of engineering was welding. Don't ask me why welding, but I was a pretty good welder. But I just thought, no, this is not for me. And I was getting into trouble with the head of personnel. Like really getting close to the wire, going, "You're going to get lobbed out if you don't do sort yourself out." And I just went. I remember so vividly. I went to this lady one day, and I said to her, "I said, look, why don't we do us both a favor, right?" So this was the salesman in me, right? I said, "Why don't we do us both a favor?" I said, "You know that engineering's not my bag, right? I'm not doing very well at college. I'm late and all the standards is crap, and and you're annoyed with me. I don't really like this, but what I am really good at, and I seem to excel at, is all the techie stuff, all the microprocessing stuff at college, right? Um, I was the go-to guy. I was the geek of the classroom, right? All these engineers in their apprenticeships were kind of like doing their engineering thing. I was crap at that, but when it came to the techie stuff, bang, it just switched on. So I said, look, can I get into the ICT area? Massive mainframe in the ICT area. No apprenticeship ever went into the ICT. Don't ask me why, but
Mhm.
it didn't. And then I said, look, make an exception. Just put me in there. Anyway, blah blah blah. Long story short, that's how I got into IT, and that was back in blimey, well, it's in 1988 ish.
Okay.
So we're talking mainframe operating systems here, IBM mainframes,
Old
uh,
school.
to the old school MVS,
Yeah.
MVS and VM virtual machine. That was the
Yeah.
original virtual machine. Um, from an IBM standpoint, and I was just in operations, running batch jobs, doing the night shift, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, Mounting tapes, bloody great tapes like this big, put them on. I mean, honestly, when you think about it now, you just go, hang on, I was putting on a tape this big
Yeah,
physically,
mad.
putting on this, and now we've got so much power in in this. It's insane. It does, the change is just
I know. Tell
Mental.
me about it. 100%. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
So that's
How far we've come in that journey with technology, right?
right. Yeah. And that's how I got into ICT, and it very much from there went in very quickly into an end user support
Mm,
capacity as well. So
okay.
that introduced me to the notion of service
Hmm.
and service management and service desks, and what did it mean in terms of the relationship between the tech world and the rest of the organization, the business organization, and what did that bridge look like. So
Hmm.
at one stage I had a role called end user support analyst.
Yeah.
um, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I'll be honest. I just mucked about and just made a big mess of it, to be honest. But I did have a role, right? I did have that role, way back in the day. And yeah, that's how I kind of like. That was my early
Yeah.
roots. You know?
So going back to that kind of like end user support role, uh, do you think that's changed a lot from what that role was back then to what that type of role is now? Or is it
You
essentially
know
the
what?
same role?
I think it's come full circle. I really do. I think it's come full circle because then the idea of that role, I say it's come full circle theoretically, yeah,
Hmm.
the idea of the role. Um, I mean, I think that role in that organization and at that time was quite forward thinking, actually, because for want of another word, that's now like a business relationship management type of role. Yeah, when it's a typical BRM role in a typical IT operational capacity. The true notion of business relationship management today is way more than that. Is way more than that. So I don't want people to go away from this going saying, this guy called Simon Kent said on this podcast that the BRM role was all about IT operations. No, it typically is, but actually it's not. But I think the idea of what I was doing, however many donkeys years ago, I can't even work it out. This, for argument's sake, let's call it 30 years. 30 years ago. No, it's less than that. More than that, sorry, 35 years ago. It was quite ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I didn't embrace it myself at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I just mucked about. Like I said, I was just, just finding my way. I was in my early 20s, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. Probably, partying and same as anybody else in their early 20s, right?
Don't worry, I'll be doing the same as you at that age, so I
Right.
don't blame you. So, you touched on that business relationship management role being different now.
Yeah.
How would you describe it now?
Okay. I'll try and keep this answer quite concise and short because what it is now is not what it should be.
Okay.
All right. Because there's a typical business BRM role that sits inside of IT that is very operational focused, right?
Hmm.
And the result of it being operational focused, it doesn't really know what it's doing. And so IT go, what do these BRMs do? What value do they bring? On the business side goes, I don't really know what this BRM really does to me, but it's great, nice to meet you. Let me know bitch and moan about all the IT services, and then because they often, not always, but often a BRM will come from an IT background. They often jump into what I would call hero mentality, right? Where they try to fix stuff. So they
Mm.
might have come from a service desk background. They might come from a service manager, a service delivery manager background. So they're used to kind of like going, I'm going to fix stuff. And so in their BRM role, they go, don't worry, I'm the guy, with the I fix stuff written on my back, right? I'm got the
I
hero.
fixed off cape. Yeah,
Right,
the
exactly. So
cape. Yeah, yeah,
so they just fall into that mode again, and
yeah.
then they end up having all of this stuff on their shoulders, right? And they have to have these huge shoulders to be able to go, I can carry all this burden that everybody else should be doing, but they're not doing it. So I'm doing it. And then they can't do it. And then they fail at that. And then, and everybody just goes, oh, bloody BRMs, I hate them. Now that, and then BRMs themselves go, bloody hell, this role, I hate it. Right? That is not what a BRM should be doing. Right? And a BRM should be far more strategic. They should be looking at more of a cultural, how does culture move? How does value? Oh my God, we can get onto the topic of value very easy here, right? But how do we generate value from the relationship between IT and the business? Or if it's a BRM who's operating in a more of an HR capacity, then how do we generate value between the HR capability and the rest of the organization? If it's finance, right? When it's a finance BRM, then how do we generate value between finance and the rest of the business? You see what the BRM now does, right? It's like, So it's about driving value. It's about building relationships. Funny enough, BRM, the clues in the name, right? Evolving culture. I think if you think about those three things, that's what BRM truly is.
But the first time around, when you described it's someone that's come from an IT background going into that role, I would have thought it's hard for someone that's got an IT background that's been techie to then decide not to be techie and to then be strategic, cultural, add value. It must be hard for them to try and not fix things. So how do you kind of bridge that kind of gap from being a techie 1 minute and then going into a BRM role where you don't have to necessarily fix things. You do need to think a little bit differently. What would you say to that?
Easy answer.
Good.
Right?
Hit me with it.
BRM, business relationship.
And just focus on relationship. That's it. Stop the fixing. Yeah.
Stop fixing shit. There are other people that should be responsible for fixing the stuff, for doing the projects, for doing the enterprise architect, for doing the blah, 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 the services gone, service review, the SLA, the blah, 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 all that other shit that goes on. It's important shit, but excuse my language, but it's important. It's really important. But the BRM focuses on the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Don't get dragged into this other stuff. And that's where they have. Sorry, I just want to elaborate this because coming from an IT background, what they must do is focus on the relationship with IT.
Mm-hmm.
That is just as important as the relationship with their business counterparts. Yeah. So imagine they're this bridge between, but they're not. But that doesn't make them a single point of contact. They're a single point. It's known as a single point of focus. So they become a connector.
Yeah.
Right. It's like imagine the old images of the telephone operator, right? Hold the line, please, and then there's somebody plugging in connecting. That's a BRM.
I think BRM is going to be gutted now. You've put them alongside a telephone operator.
I know, but that's the image, right? I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that's the connector. There's other metaphors as well around it, but that's an important one.
Yeah, no, I get it, 100% get it. So obviously you've done the BRM role, right?
I've done it as a in a external customer facing capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you take me way back to the end user support analyst role, yes, I did it then as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what does life look like for you after the first line end user type role? Where's that elevation to the next level of your career kind of, when does it happen? And did you choose it or did it kind of just naturally happen? I like the fact you're laughing about it already.
No, everything in my life has just sort of stumbled. It sounds like a great plan. I know I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. No, just all. it's like falling down the stairs, you know, just sort of like, and then you
Pick up
land in a
pace along the way.
and you land in a heap at the bottom and go, all right, okay, so that's what's going on now. All right, fair enough. So, so out of the end user world, I then went into a world that was much more service desk orientated.
Okay.
And so I was again, but it was always sort of like as a supplier, a software supplier to end user customers.
Hmm.
Okay, so it is an external relationship. If it was like if you like supplier customer,
Yeah.
in the typical kind of model. That then led to working with an organization called Bendata. In fact, it was even before Bendata. And Bendata was the originator of the Heat product. And the Heat product is now, after many, 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 many years and iterations and acquisitions and stuff like that, is now Ivanti Heat. Okay.
Avanti heat, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where it is today. But the Avanti heat looks nothing like the Bendata heat of back in the day. And
Okay.
bear in mind, we're talking about, again, I'm going to show my age here. We're talking about heat for DOS.
Wow.
Heat for DOS. That was my first help desk product that I had to go and install and configure. Heat for DOS, right? Floppy disks, little like floppy disks. Zoom it in. I had about I had elastic band around a set of floppy disks, probably about 10 floppy disks, right?
Yeah.
Elastic band around it. There you go. That was heat for DOS. In it goes. Today we just download it, right? And it just it's all magically, it's all magic. No, back in them days it was floppy disks with elastic band.
Yeah.
Shove it into a what they called a server. That was just a glorified PC. Mental times.
Simon, what I was going to say was for those that are listening that don't know what heat for DOS is, can you explain?
Yeah, Heat for DOS. Heat standard for Help Desk Expert Automation Tool.
Hmm.
So again, the clues in the name, Help
Yeah.
Desk Expert Automation Tool. So for want of another word, it was the very early days of a ticketing system, the
Yeah.
service desk, help desk system, which then turned into, I mean, Heat for DOS turned into Heat for Windows. And from the Heat for Windows era, that at that stage I was a consultant. I was doing installation consultant, so I was a professional services consultant, installing Heat for Windows to a whole raft of different organizations around the country, possibly Europe as well. So off we go in my career, right? And then in my late 20s, I went with two other guys. We said, right, enough. We're going to go and do our own thing, right? So we then started our own company.
So
We
just
didn't,
just before you go into it, just to confirm, this is after you've done your professional services part in
yeah,
your career. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Carry on.
Well,
Sorry.
it was during the professional services part
Yeah.
of my career, yeah. But yeah, I'd done this period of consultancy. I was about 28 years old, yeah, 28, 29 years old, and I started ICCM with two other guys, right? And we started ICCM. The funny thing was, we didn't have a bloody clue what we were doing. We didn't have a clue. We didn't know what we were going to do, who we were going to do it for. And we just went, sod it, we're just going to go and start our own company. And that's how ICCM started. It's so funny when you look back on it. It's just complete chaos. So, how not to be an entrepreneur, right? Just fall into this stuff, right?
I actually think a lot of entrepreneurs do. If I'm honest with you, they do.
Right.
A lot of them aren't planned entrepreneurs. Don't get me wrong, some are, but a lot of them aren't. And it's interesting. I'm really intrigued to hear about ICCM because it was you and how many others? Two.
Yeah, two. Yeah, there were two of us. The three of us. Sorry, the three of us, two others. So there's three of us to start with. And then one of them left. Another guy joined us. So then it was still three, but a different dynamic of three.
Hmm.
Um, and during that period with ICCM, in the early days, we were just doing regular ITSM consultancy.
Mhm.
really. So helping those that we'd had relationships or generated relationships with, to help them with whatever tool they happen to have, whether it was Remedy at the time,
I
maybe a
remember.
little bit of Service Now, you
Mm.
know, maybe a bit of Heat, who knows, but not necessarily Heat, because there was sort of like, couldn't touch the Heat customers because that's where we'd come from. So we had to kind of like branch out into other areas. But then magically, excuse the pun, but we then formed a relationship at during the early days with Network Associates. Right, Network Associates eventually sold the Magic product, which was a competitor to Heat. Right,
I'm still thinking about the pun, if I'm honest with you, but yeah, I know what you
right.
mean. Yeah.
But yeah, they had the product called Magic, which actually was bloody brilliant. It was an amazing. It was so ahead of its time. Magic was so ahead of its time. It's died a death now.
Yeah.
Real shame, because it was so ahead of its time. But and that was with Network Associates, and lo and behold, we had to, amongst other things, as well as going out and selling Magic, which we could as a reseller, we could go out and sell Magic, and that meant we could generate our own professional services again off the
Mhm.
back of the sales of Magic. Network Associates wanted us to also deliver all their training. Now I've got into a training career, right?
Cool. You're showing all sides of your skill sets here now,
Oh,
Simon, aren't
oh
you?
no! And now I start my training career, right? I remember this quite vividly. I'll just quick anecdote, quick story. But I was going to deliver my very first training course on Magic. It's a 5-day admin course, right? I was staying away from home. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, quite frankly, absolutely crapping myself, right? I
Yeah.
was just going, what the hell? I was going into this environment where I didn't know the environment. It was full of about 15 PCs. You had to do this. You had to just stand on your leg and, whistle the national anthem and all this sort of stuff to make it all work. Um, Binders about this thick, you know, just like, going, oh my God, I got to teach this stuff for 5 days. And the people I'm teaching know more about this software than I do.
How do you know that though?
You
How do you
don't.
know? Yeah,
You
you don't know
don't,
that, do you?
but this is the sort of fear that kicks in, right?
Yeah.
And I was driving on the Monday morning to go and deliver the very first, day. I was shitting myself, absolutely. Like, I pulled over in a lay-by, and I was like having palpitations, just like going, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and I just thought, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
There's your other mate doing some work up in Liverpool. He's keeping the payroll going so far and has been doing it for months. There's your other mate who's sorted out the relationship with Network Associates and got this gig in the first place. Now, Si, it's up to you to put on your big boy pants and go and deliver.
So did
It
you put
was
on your magic cape?
I did. I then just kind of like had to breathe. I had to open the door, so
Yeah.
like one of the windows. Oh my God, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. And then just said, you can do this. You can do this. So these are those moments as an entrepreneur, you know, yourself as an entrepreneur, I expect, just have these moments where you just go, I can't do this thing. I can't do this thing, but you just
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
I think that's normal. I think anyone that's an entrepreneur will say to you that, you know, sometimes you kind of you'll always have fear, right? There'll always
Yeah.
be fear.
Yeah.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or not, there'll be fear in everything that you do. But
Absolutely.
as an entrepreneur, and look, let's be honest with you, you you're driven there already. You were on your way. You had you had everything prepared. It was more just a case of like overcoming yourself and delivering at the end of the day. And
Exactly.
yeah, and
Exactly.
sometimes I think, you know, just in life in general, not as an entrepreneur, but we overthink what people are going to think of us if we get something wrong or if we say
Yeah.
something wrong. Where I think people are fine about it; they don't mind at all. You know, you put your hand up, say, "Oh, sorry, I said that wrong," or "I should have
Yeah.
meant it in this way." people are fine about it. I think we just
Yeah.
put fear in ourselves at the end of the
Oh,
day.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about that a lot more as we go
Yeah,
into
yeah, no,
the
we will do.
stroke
We
world.
will do.
But yeah, overcoming fear. Fear is a massive thing, you know, and we just make that crap up in our own heads.
We do. 100%. I agree with you. So
Yeah,
just going back, do you remember how old you was when you started up that business?
28, 29.
28, 29, and you'd been working in IT from what, about 18?
Yeah, roughly sort of 20. Call it 20ish. Yeah,
So about you got about 10 years worth of experience behind you before you start up your own business.
yeah.
I'm thinking for those listeners who are in the early stages of their IT career, would you say getting a good amount of experience, let's say 10 years behind you before you start up your own business, if you wanted to start your own business, is the right amount of time? Or could you have done it sooner? Should you have waited a little bit longer? Or does it not matter? Is it based on
I
you as the individual again?
that
Yep.
there
Bingo. Yep.
that is that you can't say, you know, you could be a bloody 13-year-old like genius that comes up with some you know idea.
Yeah.
Go for it, you know, just
Yeah.
do it, go for it.
Yeah.
If it's a great idea and it's in your heart and you want to do it, just do it.
Yeah. I
You
agree
know,
with you. I agree with you. I
you
do.
don't, there is no kind of like, oh no, you must go and, you know, work on the coal face and get experience. No, that's rubbish. No, just do it.
I think we're if you look at some of the other countries around the world, their entrepreneurs are actually started at a younger age and they're embraced a lot more to be entrepreneurs. I think in England we are a little bit more reserved and a little bit more
Yeah.
cagey about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship.
Mm.
And I think we should embrace it more. Let's be honest with you, we don't need everybody going into employment. We need entrepreneurs to set up more businesses so that
Right.
we can have more individuals going into businesses as an employee. So I just think it's an area that, as a country, we could be doing more in, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
but
I agree.
it was great to hear you start your own and look at your LinkedIn profile. I think you did that for 11 years. Is that right? That business ICCM.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as we progressed through, we eventually lost the contract with Network Associates. Don't ask me why. It just
Yeah.
bang, just went overnight. And then we were like going, what the hell are we going to do? You know, because that was quite lucrative. And then suddenly
Mm,
it's like gone. Um, and then the same guy that sorted out the relationship with Network Associates, he then stumbled across this organization called Metastorm, right?
okay.
And a platform called eWork. And he said, "Have a look at this," and he gave it to me. And he said, "Have a look at this." He said, "I'm not sure that if this is any good or whatever." Anyway, so I installed it, and here's another anecdote. And I shouldn't really tell you this anecdote, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. You can edit it out if you want to.
Go on, hit me with it.
I'll hit you with it anyway, right? eWork was a platform of nothing, right? It was a workflow platform, right?
Mhm.
Brilliant capability, but it would do workflow for anything. And its problem was the Metastorm folks who were trying to sell it didn't have a solution to sell, right? They were always just trying to sell a platform that you could use for anything. But people couldn't get their heads around that. They wanted a IT solution. They wanted a blah 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 solution, a
Mhm.
finance solution. They want, you know, so they wanted a line of business solution.
Yeah.
Now, us being IT geeks and me being an IT geek, I looked at this platform and I went, I reckon I can model incident management into that.
Mm.
I reckon I can model problem management into that. I reckon I can model change management into blah blah blah. So I obviously slept on this one night and I woke up like this is about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up and I just like, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And I sat there. I was sitting in my flat and I was like going, tapping away on the keyboard, looking at this platform. And this is the bit that you might want to edit out. I had smoking a spliff.
We're definitely keeping that bit in, 100%.
But I was like, I had a reefer going, and I was just like, and I was like, bang, like eureka moment, right? And it's just like, poof. And I went, and before I knew it, I'd drawn and modelled in the rudimentary version of an incident management process that I'd taken and looked in the ITIL manuals, right? I'd literally gone plus my own knowledge, flicked through and went, okay, I need to capture that, and that then goes to that, and then that goes to that, and designed it. And I went, bloody hell. There's an incident management process sitting on this platform called eWork now.
Yeah.
So I then, the next day, spoke to my colleagues and went, right, we got this, blah, 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 we got this thing, right? I know, let's call it e-service desk, right? And so we just made up this thing, right? And it was all just done on the back of a fag packet, really, and me smoking.
That sounds like your career so far.
I know, it was, honestly. This is my career. Exactly. This is it. And then, and that became e-service desk. And that then, obviously, it took hold, and then we established it, and we polished it, and we blah, 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 and turned it into something that then was sellable. And that went on to sell to all manner of, we had 300 customers.
Nice. Very nice.
Running on that. I mean, it wasn't all designed with me smoking like a reefer. That was just the very beginning, right? But, and my role at that stage was very much head of customer services. I was director of customer services in ICCM, and it was like we went on to sell. We'd changed some personnel at that point, and we went on to sell bucket loads of that. Like I say, about 300 customers. It was good margin as well. We had a great deal. That again, I'd worked out that deal with the platform provider. So we bought the platform at this money.
Yeah.
But every license of e-service desk was this money.
And
Hello.
Was it sold on a per license basis?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like a decent margin. So it was good margin on the software licenses. And effectively had an OEM license. So we had an OEM license of the platform. We built e-service desk on top of it, with lots of margin on the software. And then we had all the professional services that went with it.
Yeah.
It was a nice, profitable business. It was
Very
a really tasty business. And that went really well. And then we started branching out into North America, and we established, we even sold it into Microsoft.
Nice.
At one stage. I mean, clearly they don't use it now, but at one stage, Microsoft at Redmond signed up. And we're looking at, I don't know if this is myth or it was true, because I then, after we got Microsoft, I went, okay, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done now. I'm going to leave. Yeah. And I sold my shares to the other two guys, and they then went on actually. And I had a tidy, profitable day, when I sold my shares. I went, yeah, happy days. I'll be happy with that number. See ya. I'm off. Right. And effectively retired for a year. And just went, let's just do this thing.
Sorry,
and that
Simon, before you move on, Simon, what was the decision making behind stopping then for you and then selling your shares to the other two?
All manner.
Because it sounds like the business was thriving. You were
it was.
You sold it to clients here. You're in North America.
Yeah, it
was.
was.
I know. As a business owner, it can take its toll on you. But
I think that was starting to happen. It was taking its toll on me. Yeah.
Okay.
And I could see the writing on the wall as customer services director. You sort of like, the buck stops, right? The buck stops with you, and it doesn't matter what's been sold, what's been delivered, what's been it eventually comes down the line, and it ends up as a customer service
Yeah.
issue, right?
Yeah.
And as director of customer services, I could see the writing on the wall, and I just thought, okay, this is great that we've got Microsoft and we've got other very significant logo names,
Mhm.
right? I won't list them all, but we had some very, very significant names, and I just thought, do you know what? I think this is tough now. I think this is going to get really tough, and I don't know if I'm really up for this. Not really. I like the early days, the sort of pioneering, sort of
Yeah.
like let's go do this mad idea and make something happen. And yeah, so after 11 years of doing that, I just went, nah, this is enough for me. I'd got recently had my second child as
Mhm.
well. And so there was a lot of demand there was demand on the business side, there was demand on the home side. And I felt I was caught in the middle. And I just thought, okay, home side's going to have to win. I want to dedicate, to my kids and yada yada yada. So that was the time when I then sold up, and then I'll move on very quickly then into the world of Cherwell, because then
Yeah.
after that, a year later, I then started at Cherwell again for the EMEA organization. It is in its infancy. So again, here we go again, the repeating pattern, right? In its infancy, helping establish the Cherwell brand
Mhm.
in the UK and in Europe, and also supporting partners across the EMEA region as well. And that went really well, really really well, and to the point where the CEO, based in Colorado Springs in America,
US. Yeah.
said, "Hey, why don't you come over here?" Right? Simon, come over here, right? We got to do this thing. There's some all sorts of things going on, and blah 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 blah. And so I went, all right,
Oh,
okay.
what happened to your just having your second child? And then,
Well,
well,
yeah, exactly. Well, it didn't work out. Funny enough, this is funny enough. It ended up in divorce.
okay.
Um, and yeah, it gets quite personal in that respect, but which I don't really want to go down into.
No.
But
No.
there were some aspects where I just went, okay, I still want to do these things. And I saw going to the States as an opportunity for the family as well. And I think I probably made a big misjudgment on that one.
Okay.
And, it just
They
comes out
happen.
and
They have. It happens.
it
100%.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, then the CEO then 6 months later said, okay, I'm not going to be the CEO anymore of you. I'm not going to be your boss, but I'm bringing in this other guy. And so you're going to report to him and blah, 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 blah. And then anyway, that didn't work out. And there was a kind of like, nah, this is not working. This is not working. So at the end of 2014, that was it. Enough. And
Bye
then,
bye, Cherwell. Yeah.
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 And that was
Okay.
that.
And then since then, it looks like a lot of stuff you've been doing has been kind of more freelance type stuff.
Yeah,
Am I right in
pretty much.
saying so?
Yeah. Mm.
And I know what I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that obviously you set up a business you've got a business going with your wife, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But I do want to fast forward to today, or
Mhm.
let me rephrase that. Rewind back to 2001, where you had something life changing happen to you. Um,
2021.
to, sorry, 2021. Apologies.
Yeah. That's right.
Um,
That's right.
and I know you've written a book, and I did tell you I was going to buy the book, and
Hey, good
there it
man.
there it is.
Uh,
For those of you watching, you can see, but for those of you who are listening, I'm holding up Simon's book called The Gift, and I'm on chapter 14, and I'm absolutely loving it, Simon. But I don't think I can do it justice. But I think it would be good for the viewers and the listeners to understand what happened back in 2021 to you, and you can tell your story and talk about the book in a bit more detail.
sure. So, yeah, it was life changing. And it was probably, when I look back on it, I've become a very much more, as you will read yourself as you make your way through the book. Um, what started out as a very harrowing journey in that period that you're talking about, and I explain this in a bit more detail in a moment. But what started out has resulted in a much more awakening
Hmm.
kind of result, if you like. So I'm a different guy to the guy that we've just been hearing about, the entrepreneur that's kind of like gone, oh, I'm just a bit mad and I'm still a bit mad, and I like things to just sort of life to just take its course, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I can talk about that in a little bit more as well. But let's talk about the actual event itself. So it was September 2021. Okay, all was reasonably well in the world, right? We had just come out of the COVID lockdown period. Things were starting to pick up. From an entrepreneurial business point of view, that whole period of COVID where, we'd lost all the contracts, literally like that,
Hmm.
done. And like everybody else, we as a family just had to focus on our family, right? And
Yeah.
just go, how do we navigate this period of lockdown and COVID and what the hell was going on in the world and all of that stuff? And we actually, that period, we navigated that pretty well as a family. We're out in the countryside, we're quite isolated in that respect. We're in beautiful surroundings, and we kind of thrived as a family. And that was good. And that's, when I say family, that's myself, Claire, my partner, soon to be wife, and we blended our kids, right? So I'd been divorced in 2015 after the
Hmm.
whole Cherwell thing. So 2015 it resulted in divorce, messy, right? Yeah, not very nice. And then, so here we just navigated COVID. We got our own business, self-employed, lost a lot of contracts, had to focus on the family. That was all good. Early 2021, starting to pick up,
Yeah.
the pipeline was picking up, right? A good friend of yours and mine, Tim Mills,
Tim Mills. Yeah.
um, you know, was working with him, and we'd worked on this contract, and it was all looking good, and we were ready to start on September the 12th. Was going to be the first day of the contract. Very, very good. Great, 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 great. Okay, so here we are now. September the 11th. September the 11th was the 50th anniversary of a particular local rugby club. Okay.
Hmm.
My son plays there, so does my stepdaughter now. So real close affinity. I play walking rugby there now, so real close connection with this rugby club. So of course I put my hand up to volunteer for the day and on this festival, and it was a typical rugby club festival: sausage and cider, rugby, flowing, live band, all that thing, right? You can just picture the scene, right? And
100%.
and it was coming out of COVID, right? So people were up for a party.
People want it to be out and about.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you can picture the scene, right? It's like, actually, it's a good vibe, right? It's a good vibe, good vibe. Yeah. So I was in the beer tent, and I knew I had to serve. I had volunteered, so I kept it steady in how much I drank, right? I think I'd only had 1 pint.
Hmm.
It was strong cider, and it was very strong cider. But I was like, no, this is too strong to just down, because I've got to keep my wits about me. And even though everybody else is as pissed as a fart, I would need to keep my wits about me, because I don't want to look an idiot, right? And I need to serve pints and yada yada yada. Anyway, so there I was. It was about 6:30 in the evening, and I was doing my stint, as were the rest of the family. Well, Claire and my eldest daughter Charlotte were working the barbecue. So they were also in the beer tent, and I was in the beer tent behind the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I'm there, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I feel this like almighty whack around the back of my head, and it feels like I've been hit by a cricket bat or baseball bat or something like that.
Yep.
Right, such a bang, and I reach with my right hand to the right side of the back of my head, right, and I went, "Christ, what was that?" And as that happened, my field of vision, and everybody's field of vision is normally horizontal.
Yep.
It suddenly went like that, and it just all, and suddenly I went, "Oh my god!" And I just thought, "What the hell is in this cider? I've only had one pint of it. This guy next to me, he's had
Strong stuff.
13.
Yeah.
He's had 13 pints of this stuff, right?" And I'm going, "How the hell is he having 13 pints? I've had one pint and I'm just smashed to absolutely pieces." And I thought, this does not make any sense. I'm wrecked. I'm absolutely wrecked. And the pain had gone, because that was just an instant. There it is, and then it's off. That
Okay.
was bang, done. It wasn't pain and then like sustained pain. It was just an instant pain, gone. But then the whole field of vision, it just like everything just went in a mess in terms of what I could visually see. So I made my way over to where Claire and Charlotte were serving barbecues and doing the barbecue thing and getting rolls and all of that stuff. And I made my way over, and they kind of said to me, "Christ, Dad, you're all right." Oh, this is Charlotte. Yeah, "You're all right, Dad. You're all right." And Claire was going, "You're all right." And I was just like, and
Did they think you were drunk?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they said, "How many pints have you had?" You know, because they thought I'd been sneakily having loads of pints behind the bars, like serving, and just I'd serve one, have another one, serve one, have another one, you know, that sort of thing.
But what was going through your mind? Did you think that you were drunk, or did you what thoughts were going through your mind at the moment? Because, like you say, the vision had kind of like completely gone.
Yeah. The thoughts that were going through my mind were, what the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is going on? And this doesn't make any sense, because I was so clear cognitively to know I've only had one pint of this particular cider.
Yeah.
Somebody else had got another pint from the bar, the regular bar in the club, of like a Thatcher's Haze type of,
Yeah.
regular kind of cider. And I hadn't even finished that. I'd only had about half that. So I'd probably only had about somebody else had squeezed out of a bag, right? Some of this crazy goat and into about a half pint glass, right? So technically I'd had a pint and a half of crazy goat, and I'd had a half a pint of
So 2 pints in total. Not enough for you to be walking
I was
crazy.
literally a wreck.
Yeah.
Absolute a train wreck, right? And it doesn't make any sense. So my head was full of, what the hell's going on, and why do I feel like this? It doesn't make sense. But I just knew I needed to get out of there. I just needed to get out. I didn't say goodbye to the guys I was serving with or anything. I just had to go. Yeah, it was like instinctive. Somehow get to Claire, who could. I suppose it was a bit like, it was almost like, I need my mum, right? Not that Claire's my mum, right? But
Yeah.
it was that kind of feeling, I'm just like, what the hell? I'm scared. I'm broken. What the hell am I supposed to do? So anyway, I got over to Claire. She said, "Okay, let's take you out of the beer tent. Let's go." Grabbed a bottle of water on her way, and she literally supported me. And if she wasn't there, I'd have gone flat on my face. Straight away. But so I was really leaning on her a lot as we made our way from the beer tent back to where we'd parked the van, right? We'd got a big VW van and a camper van type of thing. And anyway, we made our way back to there. I think Charlotte had joined us as well sometime on the way back. So by the time we got there was Charlotte and her and me. And we'd got these sort of like cushions things in the back of the van. So she laid them out. and put me in the back of the van. And I was just lying there like in fetal position. And she just left the bottle of water with me, thinking that I was drunk.
Drunk. Yeah.
Right? Thinking that, oh, he's just drunk, leave him a bottle of water, leave the van open, he can be sick or whatever, he'll sort himself out, Because what else could she think, right? Same as me. I thought, what the hell is going on? I've been poisoned.
Anyone would think that you were a bit drunk. That's
Exactly.
yeah. No one would
Exactly.
know. Yeah.
No one would have a clue. Not a clue. And that's really scary, right? If you
100%.
think about, because you look at people around and you think, oh, they're drunk, they're drunk. Are they? Are they drunk? Are they really drunk? They might be exhibiting the signs of being drunk, but are they really? Is there something way more serious going on? Don't know. But, so anyway, I was in the back of the van and I remember thinking, oh my God, I really need to go to the toilet because only the 2 pints, but I'm a small guy, so I've got a small bladder, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like going, oh, but I remember thinking to myself, cognitively thinking, I don't want to just wet myself. So I had that level of cognition going on, even though my brain, little did I know, was slowly dying, and I was dying, I was in the process of dying. I didn't know it, but I was cognitive enough to go, I don't want to just lie here and wee myself, right? I need to get out. So I tried to maneuver myself out with the back of the van. And it was really apparent that there was no way I could sit up, stand up, no way. So I had to just shuffle out of the back of the van. Luckily, Claire had left the whole lid, the boot lid, the van lid, the back open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Luckily. So I shuffled down to the back of the van and just sort of fell down, slumped down onto the ground at the back of the van. And I just sort of sat there with my legs and just leant against the van, And I looked up, and the rugby club has got at least 5 pitches. And I looked across into the distance at it's the sort of furthermost pitch. And I looked across, and I remember seeing these rugby posts that we all know rugby posts, they're this way, right? No, 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 no. They were like that.
Oh God.
They were like that. They were horizontal. The rugby posts had just were gone like that. And I was just like, whoa, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? And then, and not just were they like that, they were also going round.
Oh God.
And I thought, what the hell is happening?
Are you thrown up at this stage, Simon?
I hadn't thrown up at this stage, no. God knows how, but I couldn't even open my eyes because the vision was so horrific. It was hell. It was literally hell on earth, and it was horrible. Even recalling it now kind of makes me a bit kind of like choked up because it really was awful. It was bloody awful, and I thought there's no way I can stand up, right? To go and sort of lean against a car or, go for a wee or whatever, just no way. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll try and kneel up. I'll just try and kneel so I can go for a pee, at least as a bloke, it's so much easier for a bloke to go for a pee than a woman, I mean, Christ. And I thought, I'll just do that. I'll just kneel up. I couldn't do that. And I tried to kneel up. I couldn't do that. And I rolled over backwards. And the ground, it was September and it had been a nice summer. Yeah. And the ground was quite hard. And I rolled over backwards and I hit my head on the back where I'd already previously felt like I then hit my head again on the ground. Right. And when you hit your head, I don't know if you've ever done it before, but if you hit your head, you get that horrible sort of metallic-y sort of taste in your mouth.
I haven't experienced it, I'll be honest with you.
And it's this weird feeling, and you just go, oh. And it's almost like you can almost audibly hear a dong,
Yeah,
and in your head. And I had that, and I had this sort of taste in my mouth And it was just like, no, that was not good. That's not sensible. So I just thought, no. I did eventually manage to go for a pee. God knows how, but I did actually manage to
Standing
release.
or on your knees?
No, no, no. I managed to sort of like shuffle backwards and just sort of sit somehow in the back of the van.
Yeah.
Well, not in the, but on the edge of the back of the van, and managed to go for a pee that way. God knows it. I probably went all over myself anyway, but I don't think I did. But I then got back in the van, shuffled back in the van, somewhat relieved about the bladder, and just kind of like went like that, in the fetal position, and just went, all right, what the hell is happening? And then the next thing I know, Claire and Charlotte are back at the van and saying, right, we got to go now. We're going to round up the rest of the kids. They were, running feral around the festival somewhere, just going like, God knows what they were doing. Right, we got to go now. Let's go and round up the kids. So next thing I know, I can feel the van moving,
Yeah.
and we're heading home. Luckily, home is only 7 minutes away from the club, so it was a short journey. And I remember lying there, kind of like knowing that we were moving, and I was trying to be clever and trying to work out where we were, but I just couldn't have my eyes open because it made me feel sick, because all I was seeing were these trees and things just going past the windows, and I just thought, no, I give up on that. And then I think being in the back of the van must have been the final straw for whether I was going to be sick or not, because I hadn't been sick up to that point until we got home, and then I just said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to be sick," and just blah, and I was sick, and then carried on being sick for the whole night. So that then the remainder of that night, Claire said there's no. She called ahead to get her dad. Her dad and her mum live in an annex on the property. So thank God they do, because she called ahead to say, Dad, I'm going to need a hand with Simon. And then funny enough, he came out, and the very first thing I heard him say was, "Hey up then, had too much cider, a bit too much cider. Right, okay, let's
As you
get
would
him
do.
in. As you would, right? Bit too much cider." And she again thought, "Oh yeah." But she said, "This doesn't make sense, because that's not Simon. He doesn't do this. Never in all the years I've known him, he's never done this. This is a bit out of character." They put one either side of me, got me into the house. She then said, "There's no way he's going to go up to bed. Let's put him on the sofa. We got a lovely big sofa that allows, effectively, it's like a bed. So anyways, let's put him on the sofa." And she said, "I'm going to stay with him." She said, "There's something," and she's told me subsequently, she said there was something telling her to stay with me.
Yeah.
She didn't know, she couldn't, there was, everything was not right. It was this sort of like, he looks really pissed, but he shouldn't be. This is not him. There's something wrong, but I don't know what's wrong. Yeah. And I couldn't articulate it. Anyway, at some point in the night, because the night was just awful. It was awful. It was like a 20-minute cycle of sleep, wake up, say I needed to go to the toilet. She would then have to ring her dad to get her and Roger, his name is, to come and escort me to the downstairs toilet. There's no way that she could have done it on her own.
Yeah.
Because I was dead weight, basically. I was absolute dead weight. And bless her, she had to do everything for me, like literally. They talk about, wiping your ass and all that stuff. Again, it's graphic. I'm sorry, but it's true.
No.
It's
I get
true. At that time, I was incapable of anything.
So,
Anything.
and look, because I've obviously read the beginning of the book, I've what you're saying is pretty much word for word what you say in the book, which is so vivid from when I've read the book as well. Obviously, at some stage, Claire starts thinking this is more than just being drunk. So
Yeah.
I'm right in saying she phones an ambulance, right?
Yeah. Well, I managed to tell her about the event of kneeling at the back of the van and rolling over backwards and hitting my head.
Yep.
I managed to tell her that, and she then thought, "Oh, he's got bad concussion.
Okay.
That's what this is. There's something concussion-wise, so there is something going on in his head.
Yep.
This is a head problem. Okay, this is more than being drunk. Okay, so anyways, dialed 111. That didn't really help. They got her to kind of like do the typical stroke tests." Because by this time my vision was starting to come back, right? Even though I was being sick, I was starting to squint, open my eyes a bit, and be
Okay.
able to sort of see. And so, they were doing all the stroke tests over the phone. Can he do
Hmm.
this? Can he do this? Can he do this? And I could do all of them. Even back then, I was able to go, yeah, look, both hands, no
Okay.
drooping of the face, no nothing of that. None of it. So all of the fast stuff, face,
Yeah.
arms, speech, time. Okay, I was passing all of the face, arms, speech thing because I was even articulating and speaking quite well. And so I was passing all the stroke tests. Okay. Interestingly enough, the FAST acronym has now changed to BFAST. Now, BFAST stands for balance, eyes, face, arms, speech, time.
Hmm.
That's what BFAST, and that's the new acronym for the stroke. It's not just fast; it's BFAST,
I didn't
right? And
know that.
that's really, really no, exactly. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't know that. It's so important. BFAST, balance. I couldn't balance to save my life, right?
Mm.
There's no way. So I would have failed that one. Eyes. Nah, his eyes all over the place. Yeah, he's just a mess, and I could have told them then about the the field of vision, right? All of this, right? I'd have failed that test. Oh, I think he's had a stroke. Shit. Yeah. Let alone the face. Oh, that's fine. Arms. Yeah, there they are.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. Speech. Fine. But balance and eyes, I would have failed.
Yeah.
But then be fast, and like
Wasn't
you say,
around. Yeah.
you didn't know that even to this day, right? And people don't. They just don't know it. And that's understandable because you're not come into contact with it, right? It's unless you know, you don't
Yeah.
know, right?
100%. 100%.
So yeah, so eventually, she called an ambulance at 3 o'clock in the morning, and for one reason or another, it didn't arrive until 7:30. 7:30.
So
So
over
that's four and a
12,
half
12
hours.
yeah, I was going to say, well, 12, over 12, about 13 hours since it originally happened about 6:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So time.
Yeah.
No, didn't happen for me. No,
Mm.
I was in the hands of the, you know, a god, my god, this god, whatever, the universe. Who knows? It was luck as to whether I lived or died. It
Yeah.
really was. Anyway, so eventually paramedics arrived, blah blah blah. That's another story about the whole paramedics thing. But eventually they put me in the back of the ambulance, and I remember being wheeled into the back of the ambulance, and the doors shutting, and that was it. I can't remember anything else until I then regained consciousness when I was in the hospital, and I was on the the first floor of Swindon Hospital.
Hmm.
And I remember kind of gaining consciousness and then looking out the window going, I recognize that. Yeah. I'm in hospital. Oh, right. And then I was told by Claire, she said, you've had a bleed on the brain. And I'm like going, what? And then I instantly had a memory of my childhood when a guy in the village where I lived had a brain hemorrhage. He was only in his 30s,
Yeah.
something like that. Anyway, he'd had a brain hemorrhage one night, whisked off in an ambulance, never seen again.
Mm.
And that was my first, I recalled that memory going, people don't survive brain hemorrhages. that's not a thing that you get over, that you survive.
It must be a scary thought.
Why am I here?
Mm.
Yeah, why am I here? And I just kind of was trying to figure it all out. And it was really, and I think this was like that profound moment when maybe I just let go of everything, like literally my entire life. And I remember looking out the window, and it was a beautiful blue sky and the fields and the hills in the distance. And I remember looking out and thinking, all right, okay, I can die now.
What, Paul? Sorry. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. But I was so peaceful because I'd been through all this hell with the rugby posts
Yeah.
and all of that, and I'd been vomiting all night, and it was just awful. It was the most awful, hellish experience of for 13 hours, really.
Mm.
And now it was settled. I was in hospital.
Okay.
I felt care. I felt like I was in some kind of safe place, and I could see blue skies and field, and I just thought, all right, I can go now if that's what needs to happen. Oh, sorry, that's made me cry.
Take your
But
time.
yeah, I did think, yeah, I remember thinking that quite profoundly, but it came as a result of a big wash of peace
Hmm.
just washed over me. And it felt like, it might sound like a cliche, but it's so true. I felt like I was in the middle of some hands just holding me.
Okay.
And but I didn't, it wasn't my time. And I survived. And then here I am today, having navigated a road of recovery.
Hmm.
And today, well, here's an example, right, of how I've changed. I can have a conversation with you. I can
Hmm.
be on this podcast, and I can openly cry, and it doesn't mean anything. Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean? It doesn't. I maybe in my past, former life, leading up to this point, I might have gone, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I mustn't cry, mustn't cry, mustn't do this, mustn't do that." Whereas now I'm just going, no, it's a human thing, right? It's just a normal occurrence. So this is part of one of the many areas where I've changed. I'm a different person. I'm just more, dare I say it, authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I thought I was authentic before, and people who knew me in my past and said, "Oh, you were so positive and such a, you know, whatever guy," and real and authentic guy then. Okay, well, maybe I'm even more real and authentic now,
Mm.
because I'm a different person. And as you've read in the book, I referred to the whole idea of me version 1, version 2, version 3. So everything that we spoke about prior to this piece of the podcast, it
Hmm.
was version 2. And now this segment of podcast is about version 3. Yeah. And as you read in the book, there were pieces of version 2 that served me really well.
Hmm.
Right. So I've kept them and taken, not necessarily consciously kept them, but naturally kept them and take them through into V3 of me. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's new pieces of V3 that have come with V3, that I've kind of like gone, wow, that's an enhancement. That's a real nice feature.
Yeah.
And I use these words V1, V2, V3, because of course my background in software. Yeah, so it just makes
Different version of software, very, very
yeah,
relative. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
100%.
And so when you think about it, when you get an upgrade of software, you get bug fixes
Yeah.
and you drop some things that didn't work out, and then you get a whole new set of features, right? Well, this is exactly the same. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same.
I completely get it, 100%. I've got. I mean, look, we are coming towards the well. We've overrun the podcast. I
I
didn't want
know. I'm
to.
sorry.
No, don't be silly. But I've got a few questions for you. I think first of all, your story and what you've been through is, I suppose, well, inspiring to hear the journey you went on and coming through the other end and to where you are today and to the different versions of who you are today. But I think some of the things that would be going through that have gone through my mind, and I haven't finished the book, but from what I've read so far, is how does that affect you today? Like
It's a good question.
your brain, I suppose, when you have a bleed and you have a hemorrhage on the blade, it's not the same anymore. So how is it
Exactly.
different? How is it different? And I think people would want to know that.
Yeah, well, I think that's a real valid question. And I apologize for the length of this answer, but it's important. Um, when I was going through the early stages of recovery, and I talk about the early stages as sort of like the first 3 to 6 months, right?
Hmm.
Which is what the book's about. The book charts that period.
Yeah.
Um, somebody said to me, well, I there was several pieces of real critical information that I absorbed and helped me. So the first piece of information I absorbed was the amazing ability of neuroplasticity.
Hmm.
Okay, because in the very beginning, I had this notion that the bleed was a bit like a bruise, right? So imagine a bruise on your arm, and over a course, if you got a bruise on your arm, and over the course of a few days or a week or so, it heals itself, right?
Yeah.
It's gone, right? And wow, that's amazing. It's just gone, right? Now, I imagined that having a bleed on the brain was exactly the same. I couldn't have been more wrong, right? No, when that brain tissue has been infiltrated with blood or it's been starved of oxygen because of a clot or whatever has happened, right? That somehow that brain tissue has become affected,
Hmm.
it's dead. It's dead. There is no concept of, oh, it will be all right and it will come back. No, it won't. That that brain tissue is gone.
Hmm.
So that because it was 4 centimeter patch, that's what I'll call it, an area 4 centimeters diameter, which is quite a lot when you think about 4 centimeter diameter piece of brain
Yeah.
that's dead. Well, that's still dead. But here's the most amazing thing about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity says that, okay, we want to this neuron over here wants to communicate with this neuron over here, right?
Hmm.
And it might have done it really fast and direct through that period, through that patch that's now dead. Well, guess what? It can't do that because that's dead patch. You can't do it, but it has to go around it.
Okay.
It still wants to do it. And that's the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity, is that the brain will find a way.
Hmm.
It will establish a route to get the connection established again. And when somebody told me that, it was my physiotherapist, one of my physiotherapists that came to visit me after I was out of hospital. And she described this to me in a very rudimentary drawing kind of way. And that was just like, wow, that was dynamite. That was a huge thing. The other thing that I think was really important for me to understand, and it helped me, and it might help listeners as well, is that imagine the internet, the global internet, right?
Hmm.
When an area of the global internet goes down, not only does it affect that particular node, if you like, of the internet, the entire global internet is affected.
Yeah.
That's the same as brain damage.
Okay.
That's the same as brain damage. Again, though, over time, neuroplasticity is such that the brain will compensate and go, hang on, that node is permanently down. Forget it. Right. Okay. We got to reestablish. Hence, I can talk. And hence, I can have this conversation with you. Hence, I can do these things. But there are still certain things. If I got up out of this chair and wanted to run somewhere, I would probably run into the wall. Yeah. I would probably stumble, fall around, walk into the wall or something like that. My short-term memory is awful.
Gone.
It's absolutely awful. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you have to, I've learned to develop strategies around my life
Yeah.
to compensate for this. There are phone calls, really important phone calls that have to take place in life, like banks, whatever. I can't do those phone calls without Claire. She has to be there. I can't take in and process information as fast as I used to when it's verbal.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you're asking me questions, and that's easy, so I can just kind of. But if somebody was speaking to me and bombarding me with a lot of information,
Too much.
it's just too much. It's overwhelming.
Okay.
And so that's the long-term effect. And what I've recently, and this bear in mind, we're talking 3 years, so it's taken 3 years for me to recently accept that I am disabled, even though I can move around, I can go for a walk, I play walking rugby, all of this stuff, but I am disabled. And it's taken a long time for me to come to accept that. But I think that level of acceptance is also healing. And I think it's healing not only for recovery from stroke, it's healing from a personality point of view. It's healing from an emotional standpoint as well, because you learn to accept yourself, right? I've learned to accept myself.
Yeah.
I've learned to, I know this might sound a bit weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. You learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Nothing wrong with that.
Because I've always been throughout my life, and even recently, and even through the recovery and stuff like that, what you're reading about is one stage of the recovery. After that stage, I probably went into a period of lapse for a year or so where I tried to really get myself back into the driving seat of work, right?
I haven't got to that stage of the book yet.
Yeah. Well, that's not in the book, actually.
Oh, is it not?
Because,
Okay.
no, it's after the book. But in that period where I sort of established myself into the world of work, I then slipped in. I lost myself again, right? I lost that beautiful kind of awakening self that I discovered, which is why the book's called The Gift, right? I'd lost that in that period after that initial gift, to think that I could be somebody that I wasn't, right? Like my former self. And so I kind of tried to make myself like I was pre-stroke, as opposed to accepting who I am
Who you
now.
are now. Yeah.
Yeah. And
do you fully accept who you are now?
Yeah.
You do.
100%.
You're not embarrassed by
No.
the term disability, or that you've had a stroke, anything like that. Fully accepting of Simon Kent version 3, who you are now.
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Really
and
good.
That might even be version 4. I got to be honest.
So,
that might even be version 4. Yeah, because even version 3 was amazing. Version 3.5, I'd say, was a bit of a weird one.
Okay.
But 4 is accepting of version 3.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I think
if
it's
that
really
makes sense.
it does. It's really powerful because I think, look, what you've been through is very traumatic, right? But I also believe that even for those that haven't been through a trauma like you've been through, we do become different versions of ourselves anyway.
Exactly.
We do.
Yeah.
So, I'm a version core. I must be version 2355. I've probably changed myself so many times, but I am who I am today. So who I'm testament to, that upbringing my parents had on me, the impact
Right.
my wife and children have on me, my work, etc. So I'm a different version of myself. I believe that you change all the time. So, um,
Exactly.
but what your story is incredible, Simon, and I I want to make sure, obviously, that people are listening to this story and they're going to be inspired by it, and they want to, and some of them are going to want to find out more. Obviously, we've got the book. I've got the book. Obviously, anyone watching it can see the gift, and they can go search this on Amazon. Is that right, Simon? If they want to find
Yeah,
it, right? Yeah,
it was quite a pain to find, wasn't it, on Amazon? I
it
wish it
was.
wasn't such a pain to find.
It was.
So,
What I'll
yeah,
do when I publish or when I put the podcast out, I'll put a link in there so that everyone can find it a
thank
lot
you.
easier. Um,
You're a star. I appreciate that.
if anyone wanted to reach out to you directly and want to talk to you, what's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Do you know what? Okay, so Quantum 21 is definitely still up and running as a domain. And so I would say by email is a good route. So simon.kent
Hmm.
at quantum21.com. Now, Quantum 21, sorry for the long name, everybody. It's all one word.
Yeah,
Yeah, and 21 is spelt, not digits.
I'm writing it down because I'll put that in the overview as well when we submit the podcast, so that people got your email address as well for you.
Who would
Uh,
have known? And who would have known when I created that name? Because that was in 2018. I created that name, and who would have known that 2021 would be such a profound quantum leap for me?
Mad, absolute mad, absolute mad.
Isn't it
Um,
mad? Right? It
Completely
is.
mad. Completely
That
mad.
people talk about serendipity and coincidence.
Yeah, yeah, 100%,
There
100%.
is, yeah, but I don't think there is any serendipity and
Um,
coincidence. It's just all
yeah, look,
inexplicable, right?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you've had an amazing career, and I love the fact that it was all over the place at the beginning, and it's still, to be honest, with you, it's still all over the place now by the sounds of it.
Of course
But
it is.
I love that because everyone wants to hear different stories. Some people have got a very structured career path. Yours has been all over the place a little bit, and you've had something dramatic happen in your life, which has also impacted your life as well. But it hasn't stopped you, and I love that about you. It shows resilience. And look, we could keep talking for hours on end about
Oh, we
resilience,
could.
transformation, etc. But
Yeah.
we've got to draw a line under it somewhere. And obviously, look, it's the reason why I said if people want to reach out to you, they can do it. But I would love to have you on in the future again on a podcast if you happen to come back on
I
and
absolutely love to.
and maybe
Yeah.
talk about Simon Kent version 5 or a different version at that stage, right?
Who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. But no,
Yeah.
thank you very, very much for coming on.
Well, Khan, I really appreciate you reaching out and allowing me this space, if you like, to have this conversation with you and tell this story. So brilliant. Thank you.
No, not problem at all. Listen, I will reach out to you soon and yeah, stay in contact.
All right, mate, buddy. Thanks very much.
See you later. Bye bye.
See ya. Bye bye.